My name is Frédéric Tubiamont and this is the second chapter of my AI-assisted coding tutorial. Today we will discuss how I got started in coding at the age of 48, what my tech background was when I made this move, and why I decided to learn Python. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button to follow me in my coding journey. Ready? Let's dive in. So, how did I start? Well, I was between two professional projects in September 2022. I had some experience in development, having managed teams of web and mobile developers in various startups since the early 2000s. I was able to translate concepts into specs, create mockups, and lay out the basic architecture. But I had never truly coded myself, besides maybe a few lines of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript here and there, and the occasional API call configuration in a no-code tool. I could not be considered a total newbie, but I was certainly not a developer. My main activities today are in product management, sales, in marketing. Like many people, I was an early adopter of Zapier, which I used extensively to connect SaaS products, for instance, to transfer data captured by a Typeform to a Google Sheet or a Trello board, the usual stuff. I later moved to Integromat, which is now called Make.com, which I found much more flexible than Zapier, with a better user interface and user experience for more sophisticated workflows. Not to mention that it was cheaper to use than Zapier once you started scaling operations. But I still found that I was missing something. I wanted to go one step further, one step deeper into the code. I thought that it would allow me to develop even more sophisticated workflows while having full control on how I could interact with a bunch of APIs, then store and manipulate data. I had recently worked with a super talented developer on a competitive intelligence application which mostly relied on Python for the backend. So, on a beautiful morning in September 2022, I decided to give Python a go. I found a tutorial on YouTube called Python Tutorial, Python Full Course for Beginners by a guy called Moshe Hamedani, and it looked pretty legit, clocking at 6 hours 15 minutes. I think I went through the whole course in 2 days, coding along in PyCharm, which has become my favorite code editor. As for all programming courses, it started with the proverbial Hello World, which is super easy to achieve in Python. It might be the right moment to tell you why I think that Python was the right choice for me and might be the perfect option for you too. One of the main reasons why I love Python is that it makes it super easy to connect with APIs. Okay, but what exactly is an API? It stands for Application Programming Interface. But this doesn't tell you much, does it? Usually, when you interact with software, you do it via a GUI, a graphical user interface. That's what made Apple so popular, so successful in the early days. Before that, people used to type rows of green text into their black terminal to interact with their computer. And Steve Jobs, inspired by the research carried out at Xerox PARC, had this brilliant idea to ship a GUI for the Macintosh in 1984, followed by Microsoft Windows in 1985. Building a nice user interface requires quite a lot of work, and in some cases it's easier to interact with software via simple HTTP requests, behind the scenes, not lifting a finger. When you're using an API, you're either posting information to an endpoint, for instance to transfer the data collected by a form, or getting information from an endpoint, for instance to retrieve the weather forecast for a specific location. The endpoint itself looks like a traditional web URL. You can secure the connection via an API key or a more sophisticated method, and then pass the data in a structured format called JSON. And you also get the data back from the API in JSON format. Once I understood how to use Python to interact with APIs, I started coding dozens of local scripts, mainly for market research, SEO, and content creation. I connected Python with data for SEO, Value SERP, Google Sheets, and WordPress. To be honest, little did I know in September 2022 that 2 months later, OpenAI would open its API to the public and release ChatGPT. It was simply the perfect timing. I started experimenting with GPT-3 and later GPT 3.5. This gave me the opportunity to create little simple apps that went beyond the off-the-shelf features that you could find in ChatGPT. Python gave me superpowers. For a few months, while I was still learning from YouTube, I only coded local scripts which ran in PyCharm locally on my computer and also on Replit.com, an online code editor which I strongly encourage you to check out on the web on Replit.com. One of my first front-end projects was an imperial metric converter which I called UK EU. It doesn't use Python, it's in pure HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript. I will leave the link in the comments below, as well as the full code in a GitHub repo. It was one of the first projects for which I partnered with my favorite coding assistant, ChatGPT. This UK-EU converter was followed by a series of simple projects blending Python for the backend and HTML, CSS, JavaScript for the front end. In May 2023, I felt confident enough to ship the first version of the AI Jingle Maker using Flask, a lightweight web framework for Python. It wasn't a proper SaaS yet. There were no user accounts, nothing fancy in terms of features, just 4 choices and a limited amount of options. You couldn't even write your own text. But the app generated some sales from May to August, so I decided to go one step further again and release a more sophisticated V2. I already had some code from the V1, which I repurposed with ChatGPT, adding the multi-tenant logic for user account. I also built the whole UI and the backend logic for the new jingle generation experience. I was able to move from V1 to V2 in less than 5 days, including the whole payment logic using Stripe. Since then, I've been adding features on a weekly basis, and the tool has attracted more than 5,000 signups. As promised, I will detail in this series some of the features which you will be able to integrate in your own projects, such as authentication, data tables, and payment widgets. But before that, we'll have a look at some examples of Python code generated in partnership with ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot. Remember that you can follow along by subscribing to my newsletter, the AI Coding Club. I will be sharing weekly reviews of AI coding tools, coding prompts, code snippets, and even full code bases. You can sign up for free on aicodingclub.com. That's aicodingclub.com. Thanks for watching this video. See you in the next one.